Welcome to Jazz Cabbage Cafe, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Jamie Lowell hosting. This is Rick Thompson. We're here with Shelly Smith, Debra Young, Adam Brook, and very special guest Pony Boy from Los Marijuanos. Those last two broadcasting from Las Vegas, Nevada, and the CHAMPS Glassware Show. Welcome, everyone.
We got a twofer.
A two.
So
2 for 1, my nuggets.
Yeah. Let's check out our great spot here just for a minute.
And for those that may have missed it because you're on audio only, that's our sponsors, Real Leaf Solution, Grow Green MI, Detroit Nutrient Company, Redemption Cannabis Company, and the Botanical Company, celebrating a brand new store opening in Kalkaska. Jamie and I visited this last week.
That's right. And we're
pretty amazing.
Soft opening under medical, and the adult use license. I think the inspection went down today, so in just a few days it'll be adult use. We'll have a little extra party up there to help get it going.
Fantastic.
It is a beautiful place, man. It's an old opera house that was totally refinished into this dispensary, and then next door in a few months will be a social use lounge right next door. That's really good. So we'll keep everybody updated on that, and hopefully we'll get some people up there, and we'll maybe even broadcast from up there at some point.
They got Wi-Fi in Kalkaska?
Yeah, just got it.
Wow, they just got it, huh?
You know, Kalkaska has been awesome about accepting these businesses, man. And,
I know. They needed it. Listen,
yeah.
It's a big boom to their community.
Yeah. Yep, they have an industrial center up there, an industrial park where they have multiple commercial cannabis grows. The city is host to multiple cannabis distribution centers right now. Processing centers are licensed up there as well. Talk about really revitalizing a small Midwestern community where tourism took a dive, manufacturing was gone. Now you've got cannabis saving the day. Love to hear that story.
Well, yeah, the Municipal League needs to get a hold of that story and start promoting that shit.
I agree. Jamie, who do we have on today, man?
Hey, we're gonna be joined maybe sooner than later by attorney Sean Gallagher, Sean P. Gallagher law firm, and check in on a few different issues with him. In fact, we're going to get more into that particular interview with him at about 4:30, but he has decided to join us a little bit early so he can get in on the early conversation here. And it's okay too, because one of the things I wanted to kind of cover was the MICIA conference that a few of us on this particular call just recently attended. But I really don't mind, since since Adam came on and he has got Pony Boy hanging out with them. I'd like to check in with these guys and what's going on in Vegas with NAM and how you're doing individually and all that kind of stuff. I think now would be a good time to see what you guys are up to.
Cool. Well, today's the first day of the CHAMPS show, and a bunch of Michiganders here. Bernie's here from Custom 420 Promos with our adopted children, Deb and Bobby West, Uncle Stoner.
Squash off.
Squash off's in the house. Just meeting and greeting people that we haven't seen. Some of these people we haven't seen since CHAMPS in Las Vegas 2 years ago.
Yeah, it feels good that we're going to be able to get to actually get to talk to people personally, not on the phone, face to face in a big convention center. I don't know about you guys, but I'm still going to be wearing my mask. Don't none of you guys get mad at me or whatever, think I'm weird. I'm just looking out for myself.
Vegas has gone back to suggested mask wearing in all the buildings and whatnot.
In fact, new CDC.
Everywhere, my nuggets.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's new CDC guidelines. Those who are vaccinated could be carrying it around, and the new variation is very fast spreading and dangerous. And those who are not vaccinated are very susceptible. So it does help out.
And everybody has their own, opinions about being vaccinated and not getting vaccinated. We could go on and on for that. they're saying that people that are vaccinated are still being affected or still catching the other virus or whatever have you. So it's like, man, whatever it is, I'm going to try my best to stay safe. And I'm still going to mask up when there's a whole bunch of people around.
Yeah.
That's all.
I feel
Right
that.
on, man.
I feel that. Yeah.
Good for you, man. Thank you.
I know, you guys.
Role model, man.
No,
that's
I
good.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Better
The other
safe,
thing
you
that
know.
happened here was CHAMPS, due to a change here in Nevada, was forced to exclude Delta 8 from the show. Like
I didn't know that shit for real?
Last week. Like,
shit.
This is recent.
Very, very recent. You know, there were people that were planning on coming out to the show and booth space and all that.
I bet.
Can't display it, but obviously they'll still sell the shit out of it, because if you're selling Delta 8 on your shelves, you're buying it, and these people are selling it, so they don't have to display it in a booth to sell it. But there are people that are upset, and that's something that CHAMPS is dealing with, because it wasn't CHAMPS' decision, you know.
Right.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of weird? It's something that's not even considered as a.
This is Nevada. You barely have.
Well, there's lots of stuff that goes with the Pony Boy, like whether it's made from hemp or whether it's made from cannabis, and then
is it tested? I mean, that's the real issue. Is
some states completely prohibit it. Some states just are going under the hemp thing, allowing what some people call a loophole to kind of continue. And then in Michigan, we housed it under the MRTMA, so it gets sold along at the cannabis stores along with regular cannabis. It hasn't started
but it
yet,
won't be sold where it's being sold now in Michigan.
Yeah, I think that's until October. Yeah,
right.
Everything is a little bit weirder in our industry too. I mean, we want things to be logical, we want things to be proper, but the way that we think of logic and proper may not necessarily be the same way that regulators are thinking that. And they've got a lot of reasons for doing what they do, but I'm glad that here in Michigan we had the foresight to regulate Delta 8 to make it continually available to the consumer instead of banning it like 18 states have done so far.
Well, right, because technically in Michigan, I believe it would have qualified as a oh, now I lost the word. I'm sorry.
There's some good concentrates, my nuggets. It's
Yeah.
okay.
We've been partying a little.
Well, you know what? I like what ideally, not likely or wasn't ever realistic, but if it would have stayed under hemp, stayed under MDARD with regulation and still be able to be sold everywhere without all the excessive amount of crap that comes with it by housing it under the MRTMA, that would be ideal. But given the reality of the situation, it was either it gets completely banned or it at least can be done.
Well, it makes sense that all the cannabinoids would be controlled by one organization.
Yeah.
I mean, I would listen if I was controlling the cannabinoid situation. I'd want my people to control all the cannabinoids. I mean,
I don't like some of the discussion leading up to it was stuff like, oh, everything that's got to go ahead. I'm sorry, Adam.
I was just saying, as a gangster, that's the way I would do it. Okay.
Some of the problem is some of the discussion leading up to this was like, everything that has a potential for abuse should be housed under this, so they could all, and that's the language of the controlled substances list. And I'm happy to announce, and then we'll start the MICIA conference here, or conversation here in a minute. But I was able to have a conversation with Rep. Robbie while we were up there, who I and some others have been working with for a long time to try to get a bill introduced to take cannabis off of the state's controlled substances list. That bill will be introduced here coming up in a few days. I'm very happy about that. But
to just remove it?
To just take it off, rip the Band-Aid off.
Deschedule completely.
Yeah. Which should have actually already been done a long time ago.
From the beginning, that's what I had two companies confront me because I'm going to be honest with you, I've never heard of Delta 8 until maybe a good ass 4, 5, 6 months ago only, literally. So this company says, do you want to do Los Marijuanos, a Latin brand of, Delta 8? And I'm like, I've never even heard of it. Started asking my people around there. I was about to do it, but then you guys are telling me this is all happening right now. So is it a good move that I didn't go for it right now?
Well, it depends, Pony Boy. Is that going to be distributed in the United States or in Latin America? Because if it's being distributed south of the border, go for it. Those people don't have rules like we do.
But that's the plans I got. Well, as far as I got a big ass Latino following on my Facebook. I got close to 1 million people, easy, and all my fans are from Bolivia, Uruguay, Paraguay, España, And my biggest one is Mexico. So yeah, but I wanted to first sell in the United States, but yeah, if I'm able to do it and it's better of a chance of me doing it in Mexico or overseas in Sudamerica, then I will do it for sure, man. But just hearing the news from you, I was very surprised right now. So there's a reason why I'm here, not only to dab out with my friend and be here at the chance, but I'm so glad that he invited me on you guys' show.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so
Happy
much
to
for
have
the
you, man. Hey,
opportunity.
please let us know about Los Marijuanos shows, anything you're doing personally. Give yourself a few plugs on your projects here.
Man, many blessings. I can't even wait. We're supposed to perform at last year's Hash Bash Cup. On account of COVID and everything that happened, we will be performing this year, definitely for this year's Hash Bash Cup, performing with my group Weed Al Dankovic. So you guys heard of Weird Al Yankovic? He does pop parodies. Weed Al Dankovic, I do pop parodies.
Nice.
That is
I got
great.
I got one like the Eddie Money remake. I did cause I've got 2 nuggets of something nice. Valuable and smoke tonight. I've got 2 nuggets of something nice.
That's
I
cool.
want to take you on a trip so far from here. I do all kind of parodies.
Yeah.
My nuggets, but yeah, look out for us, please, on Los Marijuanos Instagram, Los Marijuanos official, and on Facebook, Los Marijuanos. Man, I can't wait to perform for the Hash Bash Cup. It's on in Pop in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Weed Al Dankovic. That's classic.
That's so cool, man. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
listen,
Weed
before-
Al Dankovic.
I've been hearing it all day. It's great.
I'm sure. Hey, before we start talking about the MICIA conference and getting into the interview with Sean, let's give Shelly a moment to talk a little bit about Reeds and Weeds because she has a big event happening tomorrow. Shelly, what do you got?
Y'all, I'm so excited. So a couple of months ago, a publisher reached out to me about a book called The Spree of 83. It's the life and times of Freddie Powers, who was for, his whole life until he died of Parkinson's in 2016, like the sidekick of Merle Haggard and Willie Nelson. He lived on Willie Nelson's golf course for 15 years. He toured with Merle Haggard. He did like 20 years in Vegas. And I've literally, if you like love stories, if you like music history, if it's so good. It's called Spree of 83. And I didn't know Freddie Powers, but if you're a musician, that musician that everybody loves to play with because they just know what they're doing and they're generous and sweet and everything. That's the way everybody talks about Freddie Powers. So they reached out to me to have Catherine Powers, his widow, and the biographer talk with me on Reeds and Weeds because Freddie died of Parkinson's and sort of really promoted the idea of like Parkinson's is what helps me, And his wife or the publisher said, I'm sure that Catherine will want to talk to you about how when he was in his final days, she would blow smoke in his mouth to relax him and to calm him down. And it's just so many great stories. It's awesome. So please look it up. Please look up Freddie Powers, look up The Spree of 83, and it'll probably be out in about a week. And I'm just so excited. I was bawling this morning reading like 50 pages near the end. It's such a sweet story. It's such great, hilarious Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard and Freddie Powers, just like a lifetime of leaving each other voicemails with dirty jokes on them. Just it's wonderful. So wonderful stories. Thanks for letting me talk about it.
We all need a friend like that. Shelly, how can people tune into that show and listen to that?
Well, we're on all the streaming platforms. You can go to reedsandweeds.com. You can find us on Spotify or iTunes or where you listen to podcasts. And my Instagram is at Reeds and Weeds.
Is that going to be live or is that going to be recorded and then released later?
It'll be recorded and released later.
So
What's
Shelly,
the release date?
I'm sorry.
Probably, I would say by next Wednesday.
Right on. Shelly, what would have been some of the most popular shows that you've had? And who has been on there?
Shamelessly plugging.
Oh gosh, Jamie, it's funny that you should ask. You know,
Oh,
we
my
seem to
God.
have some. I'm glad. So, believe it or not, America Before, the last show that you were on, is very popular. Fingerprints of the Gods, another show that you were on, is very popular.
And in all seriousness, we
Keeps
need to continue.
streaming it. Is it
We need
you?
to
You
continue
keep
the,
restreaming it over and over.
Jamie goes to sleep at night and just presses play.
Yeah,
and
That's what
let
I
I haven't
said.
even seen it.
Not
I haven't even
leaving,
seen
so
it.
it looks like a lot of people.
But we do
are.
need to continue the discussion. We need to get.
Oh yeah, I have so many things lined up. I put out about on one of the Michigan Cannabis business Facebook pages. I put out there a while ago for people to send me recommendations, and a lot of people did. And so for a while, I didn't really have anything going, and then I took a little break, and then all of a sudden, I have 10 books in line. And one of them will be when I do the Entheo Fest. We're reading Rose of Paracelsus, and that's going to be beautiful. We're going to partner with them, but yeah, so soon, like from here on for the next few months, it'll be like every couple of weeks. Lots
Right
of
on.
reading.
No, they're always good. And Sean, just so you know, I mean, other people have heard Shelly talk about her show a lot. The basic concept is reading good books, learning good information, experiencing great writers while smoking some pot.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then talking about it.
It's incredible. I was on it once too. It was fun.
Jim has done, he did Hamlet. Jim, we did a few staged play readings with discussions, and Jim was on that. It's really pretty wonderful.
It is awesome. And this is a great segue because I wanted to talk about the MICIA, and Jim also performed during the MICIA.
He did. I got a picture of it.
Do we have a clip?
Yeah, you did. Lewis and his band were amazing. That whole band was just
Lewis and
anybody
those,
could go up there and sing with those guys.
from Apothecary. Those guys are
Yeah.
quite awesome. I got to see them play a few times this summer, actually. So
Oh, I have to before I mute myself again, I just have to say I spent a bunch of time this morning with Nicole and Anthony and over at Apothecary talking about maybe working together on something, and they have so much good stuff coming up. I know he's talked about a lot of it on here, but I'm so excited. And I came home with some Slurricane from Apothecary.
nice.
Super
And they just had
thanks.
And Anthony just put on the first show of the summer concert series.
No, it didn't happen because of rain.
Yeah, that was
Ah,
that
I
big
got rained
storm
out.
night,
Okay.
yeah.
It got rained out, but it's in the works. A bunch of things are in the works. It's really
Right
cool.
on. That's very
So
cool.
it was a blast over there today.
Well, I know we're going to talk about the MICIA conference, and it's important that we do. But before we do, I'd just like to let you know I was given this, which is a 2-gram joint from the Hyman Company. I know it's called Apple Runts, and I'm going to pop the Hyman right now, and I'm going to smoke this bad boy while we talk to Sean and others about the MICIA conference. Go for it.
Oh man, so distasteful, especially for this show.
No, doesn't Hyman mean something? Because I remember seeing it on a billboard.
And,
Hyman
yeah, and when you
means like-
snap it,
Why?
it means something too. Yeah.
You know, maybe it has different value to different sects of people. I don't know.
probably.
I recall seeing one of those 2-gram bad boys there, Rick. Someone, they were handing them off on Thursday night at the outdoor event out at the vineyard, and I can only imagine what kind of fun that is.
Apple Runts taste really good, y'all. So
That,
the
it's got
Michigan
like a metal, or I'm sorry, like a glass filter that came with it, or
Yeah, it was a glass tip, right?
Glass, yes, sure does. The Michigan Cannabis Industry Association conference we're talking about took place over Wednesday, Thursday, Friday last week up in Bel Air, Michigan at the Shanty Creek Golf and Ski Resort. Michigan Cannabis Industry Association is the largest cannabis industry association in the state. They represent over 300 different entities, both of the plant touching and the non-plant touching kind. It is in all ways a business conference with a lot of networking thrown in there too. Jamie, Sean, Jim, and myself, we were all there, had such a great time. Jamie, take it away, sir.
Well, I mean, I was there last year, and of course, it had to be toned down a little bit given the circumstances, and still very good and fun and stuff. But this time, with people being able to gather a little bit more comfortably and a lot more participation. So it was real good. I mean, I did a lot of great networking, learned a little bit here and there, and just basically had a good time with a lot of like-minded people, and came across a lot of people I hadn't seen in a while. So altogether, just really nice thing, and appreciate Robin and Ida and all the people who worked on it and putting it together. I know it's not easy. There's a lot of egos they have to juggle. There's a lot of planning, regular stuff, and on top of a lot of other considerations. So,
yep. Two of our sponsors, BOCO, represented by Brian Gruber and Ryan Basor for Redemption Cannabis, both are in the chat talking it up. Everybody had a great time. They were both there too. A lot of wonderful people at this particular event. Jim, you were kind of excited at the event and all over the place. I saw you in a bunch of different scenarios. How did you enjoy it?
I had such a good time. It was my first one. I think that was their third annual. And in the past, I've always been busy working. So it was nice to be there and see all the people, some faces I hadn't seen in so long that I got to reacquaint myself with. I got to golf with the Wallflower folk and their team, and it was really fun on that first month. Was it Thursday?
Yeah, very cool, guys.
I've never gone. I don't know if you guys have. I've never gone to Torch Lake and stood in the sandbar like that, and that was literally just such a trip. I mean, there were people walking their dogs in the middle of a lake on this 3-foot sandbar, and it was just while you're smoking and having a couple of drinks. It really made it very surreal. As you can imagine. So, but great time. MICIA did such a good time, such a good job. And Ida was driving the boats back and forth, and a few other people were too.
Robin,
I got to give her credit because she got me back and forth quite nicely.
Yeah, and us too. Rick and I were on the early run. Yeah. We got back in time to.
Yeah, she mentioned. Yeah, you guys were a couple of.
We wanted to get out of there before you showed up. I think basically, was our.
Actually, Jamie had an important interview at the Kalkaska location of Botanical Company. That's the only reason you could drag us out of the water, because it was such a great event. Awesome, yeah. Now we have attorney Sean Gallagher with us here too, and it's his very first time on the show. Sean is kind of famous at the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association for throwing a special first night party at his own rented room, which is kind of dangerous considering who we are, right? Campfire in the back, Macallan whiskey on front, like 20 pizzas on the dining room table. Sean, thanks for throwing a good time.
You are welcome, Rick. It was a thrill to be able to do it for the third year in a row. So I worked in professional associations before I went to law school. So when I started my own practice and decided I wanted to add cannabis, highly regulated, highly politicized area of law, to my practice, which is background in public pensions and energy regulation, I knew that finding the right association would help my career and my business. And so I showed up at MICIA not really knowing anyone or much about cannabis, frankly. But that first night, as we've done at public pension conferences in years past, I just kind of passed the word around that, hey, I'm in condo 420+2. Kind of got snacks and drinks, and anybody wants to come by, please do. I made sure to let Robin Schneider know, and thank you, Robin, for a great conference. So about 3 people showed up, Rick, that first pop-up party by about 10:30 p.m., and I found myself sitting on the sofa at about 12:15 a.m. thinking, well, maybe next year. When I get a knock at the door, and Robin Schneider brought 25 people through the door, including, I think maybe Jamie, you were there. I'm not sure if Rick, you were there. And the party went till 4 a.m. I didn't realize how it had sort of become semi-legendary. So last April, we're in the midst of COVID, Robin texted me on April 22nd. She said, happy 420+2. I'm like, thanks. Cool. Okay. She's like, are you going to do your party again? Because everyone loved it. And so we did it a little differently. We had airplane bottles last summer rather than big bottles. We didn't know. We had masks. We had sanitizer. We were all outside, much like this year. And I'm blessed to have 5 sponsors, co-sponsors, the Sargent Consulting Group, their accountants in Chicago, Denver, and Detroit, and in Sparrow Consulting was another sponsor for us. RMC Legal is another firm that operates in highly regulated, highly politicized environments. And then I can't forget folks at Rare Systems who donated several pre-rolled joints to the effort in nice tubes, two flavors that tested over 23%. So as the kids say nowadays, that stuff's fire. And so we had the outdoor, we had the bonfire going, we had musicians playing from about 7:30 to 11:30 p.m. and then goes the snacks and the booze and what have you, and great. I think we had 100+ people. It was a great turnout, and we also had piñatas, and so we stuffed the piñatas with bubblegum and Starbursts and pre-rolled joints, and some ladies took to the piñata action, and there were joints flying into the sky. Nice, beautiful Michigan evening on Wednesday night, and so the pop-up party lives on. And I said in the comments, then the networking was great. I met Brian Gruber there from the Botanical Company. I also met Ryan Baser. I know I met Ryan. Ryan was at the first pop-up party, but I didn't remember. And I sort of re-met Ryan this week, which is cool. And I love it. Ryan, your timing was fantastic in the comments at 4:20 p.m. exactly. Where's the party at, Sean P. Gallagher? Well, next year at MICAA, I expect it to be probably outside again under the stars on a nice, beautiful Northern Michigan night.
Boy, I'm just doing a poor job of imitating Ryan's awesome profile picture here. He's got the big stogie and the smoke surrounding his head. We should all have a photo like that. See, there you go.
Ryan just naturally homed in on 420. There was no
That's actually his great grandfather from the mid 1800s.
I see. Well, I'll tell you this. Not only was it a great time, it was wonderful for networking. The Director Brisboe, was a featured speaker on Thursday evening. And I know that we talk a lot about caregivers here and the struggles that caregivers are having and the potential for laws that might negatively impact caregivers. But this is what I heard on Thursday evening. I heard Representative Irwin say the legacy market will always exist. It will never go away. And the only way that we can do anything about it is to make it irrelevant by growing the recreational market. I also heard Director Brisboe say regulated stores have no business spending their time chasing the unregulated market. If they want to have an improvement in their situation, they should focus on what they do and doing it better. There were two very powerful speakers that really emphasized the fact that chasing caregivers, trying to shut them down, chasing the unregulated market is not the way for this industry to become successful in Michigan. And for two people of that stature to say the same thing we've been saying here on this show and other shows, that really makes me feel good.
Well, I want to add that Director Brisboe also said maybe we can work with these companies in finding ways to make operating easier and less costly, and we can satisfy some of the issues that way. And that's also something that we've been trying to tell. And speaking of that, Sean, I'm sure, I guess I'm not sure. Are you very familiar with the controversies surrounding the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association?
I have, Jamie, some familiarity, come to understand that controversy, as you put it, over the last several weeks. In fact, I was invited to attend a caregiver event several weeks ago in Ypsilanti where that issue was discussed. And so I think I know that maybe the tip of the iceberg, kind of the high level about some of the public comments that have been made and understanding some of the concerns that the caregivers have. And that's it's an interesting framework we have in Michigan, and whether and how it changes is not something I could speak to, but I guess I have a little bit of an understanding of it. But it's been here for since 2008, right? And that's quite a stretch. So to think it would go away, hard to imagine. But who knows? I hope not.
Well, we don't need to rehash every detail about what's going on with that. We talk about it quite a bit. I'd be happy to, maybe have the conversation otherwise at some point. But our basic issue is anytime there's an attempt or an approach or a threat to peel back something that's been achieved, create more restrictions, take away rights, that's met with opposition.
Sure. Sure.
And that's what they're trying to do, and they're open about it. And so that's we have conflict. But please, we've spoken a little bit. You've introduced yourself a little bit on some stuff, and and another part of caregiver attacks comes from what happens in local townships and cities. And there's some of that stuff going on, and some people in the chat are asking about that and your opinion on some of that stuff. And I know you're working on a case with the municipality concerning how the licensing process works and things like that. Please, let's get into some of that.
Sure. Before I do this, I'm really thankful, Rick, for your invitation, and Jamie for your invitation to join you this afternoon, and kind of reading up about this whole operation. The word "cool" and Jazz Cabbage Cafe and the coolness factor and all things cool kind of stuck out to me from just reading the about. So I wanted to start with something cool, what I think is cool, and that is probably can't see it too well. Right down here, I rescued this AM/FM stereo record player.
That's very cool.
Yeah, from it's a Delmonico AM/FM radio sound system. I rescued it from a building in St. John's, Michigan, where it apparently had been in the upper level of over an insurance agency for like 3 decades. It doesn't work real well, so I'm hoping to change that. But when I do change it, the first album that I'm likely going to play on it is this one right here. I'm not sure how well you guys can see this.
Is it Pearl Jam?
This is Pearl Jam Versus.
I think Jim guessed
And
it.
this,
I called it, so if there's a prize, I get it.
this is one of my favorite albums of all time, so I'm going to be playing that sucker hopefully, and I think that's a
very
pretty cool thing. So I saw Joe Sullivan in the comments mention Gibson Township, and I'm not really at liberty to speak about that one today.
What's the overriding issue? I mean, without any details, what's the crux? Or
in Gibson Township, there is an event being planned. It's a sort of arts education and music festival called Canapalooza Worldwide, and so the planning of that event, there are some concerns about some of the residents about what kind of event is it, and it's I think the 3rd time it's being held, and so I think it's the first time that it would be held in Gibson Township here in August 20th to 22nd, and so I'm supporting that effort. I appeared at a public meeting at Gibson Township a couple of weeks back, and supporting the effort to address any concerns that the township has with logistics. I mean, sort of basic municipal concerns. What are the egress and the roadway when a large amount of people are going to come camp someplace? What's access they're going to have to the property? What's the sanitation concerns? Sort of the basics of holding any sort of music sort of festival event, and I'm involved in supporting that, and I guess I probably shouldn't go too much further. But John Schlicker is the gentleman who's organizing that event, and I'm happy to point you in John's direction on that front.
Sure. Well, John's a friend of the show. We know a little bit about the event, and
a lot of us are Canapalooza veterans.
Yeah, we also attended all those, and actually the events that happened before. I'm not sure if they were called Canapalooza, but it was a whole series of events that took place.
The last 2 or 3 were called Canapalooza.
Right.
I think this might be 4, the 4th one, I think.
Yeah, but I would like to see it go on, and I hope that it does. And we've been there, we've had fun, and they have not been dangerous or weird or scary or anything to worry about. And thank you very much for supporting.
Yeah, glad to.
I see Connie Sparrow is in the comments also too. I know that she recently had a lawsuit that I saw details on filed against a particular city. And Sean, I know that that's probably another one that you have to dance lightly around, but can you give us some details about that?
Yeah, I can, Rick. So Miss Sparrow So I represent Ms. Sparrow, and I filed that lawsuit on her behalf on July the 8th, earlier this month. And yeah, commenting on litigation is not something to make a habit of, although I'm glad to be here today because it sort of raises, there are issues of litigation across the state that I have observed over the last couple of years in practice that maybe not all the same as the issues related to the lawsuit that Ms. Sparrow's filed, or that we filed on her behalf, but issues concerning municipal control of licensing. The municipalities in Michigan, based on the Medical Marijuana Facilities Act of 2016 and the MiNORML, the Taxation and Regulation of Marijuana Act, the municipalities have been put in the position of needing to provide the approvals and local approvals to support the state approval process. And what I have observed is not only litigation now in Muskegon, but there's been litigation in places like Edwardsburg, Michigan, Berkeley, Michigan, Warren, Michigan, Alpena, Michigan, Traverse City, Michigan. So this is, and Detroit, Michigan, frankly, as has been well publicized. So the local municipal regulations are part of the framework of getting a facility licensed for medical, retail, grow, processing, safe transportation, or safety compliance, and testing. And that has led to litigation over sort of the basic issues of Michigan municipal law. So my background is in public pension regulation, serving the Detroit retirement systems for several years, and both an investment side litigation function as well as worked with them in the bankruptcy, supporting their positions. So municipal and governmental compliance is something that I've seen in a big city, working with the state. The basics, so I guess I go back to kind of the basics of how municipalities operate. They have to comply with the Open Meetings Act, for example. They have to comply with the Freedom of Information Act. They have to comply with their own charters and their own set of ordinances. And when they adopt an ordinance, and if they don't follow the ordinance, or if the ordinance conflicts with Michigan law, then that's where issues seem to have been arising over the last couple of years, and it's caused litigation. And so in Ms. Sparrow's case, I'm going to read to you, Rick. Speaking of being careful, I want to read to you paragraph 11 of the complaint we filed from Ms. Sparrow. And since I turned 40, now need the reading glasses. So, quote, "This is an action brought for relief under the Michigan Constitution of 1963, the United States Constitution, the laws of the state of Michigan, and the laws of the United States to redress damages plaintiff Sparrow suffered to her reputation, person, and civil rights because of intentional and or negligent tortious conduct, secret agreements, and conspiracy to violate plaintiff Sparrow's rights because defendants disfavored her as a woman and not a more favored man for consideration of the opportunity to provide her with zoning approval for her desired real property parcel at which to operate a marijuana retail establishment within the city of Muskegon, Michigan," end quote.
Sean, I just want to interrupt here for a second and interpret legalese for people that don't speak it. What this is alleging is that the city of Muskegon denied Ms. Sparrow an opportunity to get a license because she's female, and then in turn gave a license just like what she'd asked for to a male, seemingly with preferential treatment and favoritism. That's essentially what you just said, correct?
Not precisely. I guess I'd be a little more precise, Rick, as I must, as you know. Not exactly a license, but for approval for a property to be added to the marijuana overlay district,
right,
which is the section of the city where a license could be allowed to be approved. But so
Is it like approval for a variance or something like that? She was denied.
essentially, it's
To add to a green zone, add a property to a green zone so that it would be eligible for cannabis licensure.
Or a planning hearing or something
I think
similar.
I think that's a fair analogy. I think that
Okay.
the green zone is a fair analogy, and yet, as I understand it, that the planning, there was a planning process that preceded the consideration of the approval requests that are the subject of the lawsuit.
Okay.
Now, I can appreciate that you may not be able to expand on Muskegon and also Gibson Township too, but you mentioned a lot of other communities there that have had lawsuits filed against them. Let's make some generalizations. What are we talking about here? Preferential treatment and licensure, maybe some payola going on. The old boy network at work, trying to make sure that their own friends get the licenses and not the new guys. Is that what we're talking about?
Potentially, Rick, and I say that, broadly speaking, in the sense that the old boy network. So the subject matter of this complaint in Muskegon really boils down to, as I stated, defendants disfavoring Ms. Sparrow as a woman and not a more favored man. The essential claim is that, and for her, is that, or in part, an essential claim is that the men that made requests for similar approvals were not granted, or were granted, and they got a little bit better process than Ms. Sparrow did, and her requests were denied. And in fact, the same property that she requested approval for was that same approval was granted for that property about 7 months after hers was denied.
Oh, man, that kind of rubs it in a little bit. I mean, just from my perspective here. So,
But
That makes my blood boil.
sure. And to your point, Rick, more broadly speaking, there are instances, I think, in other states. So I read about an instance published by Politico late 2019 concerning states on the East Coast and even further south in the United States, where municipalities have been provided, or they essentially have the responsibility for local licensure within a state framework, similar to Michigan. And some of the circumstances in those places, there was one instance where apparently a local municipal official, I think it was in the East Coast state, and I can't remember the state off the top of my head here, but it basically set up shop in a cigar bar and said, basically, come on in and make me an offer, to the effect of, what are you going to give me in order that you get a license, was sort of the takeaway. And the United States Attorney's Office in that state did not take well to that. And again, December 27, 2019, there was a Politico article covering that kind of an issue. So that's the kind of issue that arose elsewhere. I'm not aware of any facts to suggest that's happening anywhere in Michigan, but I'm not aware of any facts to suggest that it has been prevented wholly. So,
you mentioned the city of Warren. Warren's kind of famous for not honoring the Open Meetings Act. And as an attorney, when council makes decisions that are not done under proper process, what's the course of action that the people have? What's the next step when it's determined that they've failed to honor the Open Meetings Act?
Well, the Open Meetings Act has two provisions, and I become familiar with them because I've litigated them and helped public bodies comply with the Open Meetings Act over a decade plus in practicing law. And, one of the next steps is for either any person, it's really standing for anyone, or the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office directly has standing to bring a civil action to undo what was done without the right procedure, and or to obtain an injunction to get an order from a court saying you can't violate the Open Meetings Act again in the future like this. There also happen to be misdemeanor criminal penalties in the Open Meetings Act for intentional violation of the act, and it really, governmental transparency is continues to be, I think, an important issue in Michigan law, and it's not going away anytime soon. Between the Freedom of Information Act and the Open Meetings Act, that's the redress, is potentially is a lawsuit to get that municipality to conform its conduct to the Open Meetings Act. I guess you should make clear there's no Open Meetings Act claim in the lawsuit filed against the city of Muskegon in Muskegon County on behalf of Ms. Sparrow. But you mentioned Warren, and the judge in that case in Warren, I'm not part of that case either, but I observed it and observed that there was the judge granted partial summary disposition in favor of the plaintiffs against the city of Warren for its failure to follow the Open Meetings Act based on the case of University of Michigan Regents versus Booth. It was Booth Newspapers that filed a lawsuit under the Open Meetings Act back in the late 80s, early 90s concerning the hiring of the president of the University of Michigan. And the Supreme Court made it very clear, Supreme Court of Michigan, that is, made it very clear that deliberations and decision-making of a public body need to be done at a public meeting on sufficient notice in conformity with the act. And what happened with the University of Michigan's case is they had basically a secret committee of those board members that made the decision, and then they kind of rubber stamped it, so to speak, in public after they made a decision in secret. And the judge in Macomb County in the Warren case found that the Warren situation was similar enough that it granted this summary disposition in favor of the plaintiffs on that claim, similar enough to the situation with the University of Michigan, that is, that they made deliberations and or decisions on marijuana licenses in secret.
Now let's make sure that we understand all licenses of marijuana facilities, plant touching marijuana facilities, must be approved by the local community. So that makes the local community the linchpin in the entire process. Now, these are multi-million-dollar operations, so the pressure to get an approval is quite great. And oftentimes that opens the door for graft and for payola to take place. Sean, are we familiar with any cases in the state where local officials are accused of accepting bribes on behalf of potential cannabis companies in order to achieve licensure? I've seen that over a number of years, especially once the MMFLA was launched. I'm not sure what your experience is with that.
I'm not specifically aware of those cases, Rick. To your point, they may be out there. I've been in the space just about 2 years and haven't probably consumed all of the case law on MMFLA licensure to be able to speak on it today. But there may be circumstances. Look, that issue is not an unfamiliar one in municipalities in other contexts in Michigan. I think I seem to recall a certain city council person in a large municipality accepting an envelope full of cash for a vote on a public contract, maybe a decade plus or so ago. So that person ended up serving time in federal prison, and so it could happen, I think.
I mean, here in Michigan, we're known for having a legislature that's not very accountable, and municipal organizations not very accountable either. But in general, we talked a lot about what goes wrong on a municipal level. What's going right on a municipal level with the cannabis industry and business licensing? Are there any examples you can stand out to your mind worthy of praise and perhaps being imitated by other communities?
Yeah, I think so. I've had very strong experience, positive experience with the City of Lansing's clerk's office. They seem to be doing a really good job working with licensees and their attorneys on renewals of licenses, updates, I mean, what have you. I mean, as things change, these are at one level, these are just businesses that have all the same issues as other businesses, whether they be real property, whether they be employment sorts of issues, and working with their local municipality is one facet of that. And I've observed that the city of Lansing seems to be doing a pretty good job, as near as I can tell, and I've had positive working relationships with them. And so I would say I understand that there was probably some heartache maybe early on that I was not involved with prior to the last 2 years when things were kind of new. But it seems to me that Lansing is doing a pretty good job these days, and I'm sure there are others. Those aren't the ones you hear about necessarily in connection with litigation, right?
Right.
But I think Lansing is doing a pretty good job. So I would say if you're interested in modeling from a customer service perspective in the Lansing clerk's office, I would say Chris Swope and his folks there are doing a pretty good job. Jennifer Zandy Smith has the lead in that office, and she is really good to work with. So if you're in Lansing, at least you've got that going for you.
One of the things I can tell you is that oftentimes the largest community in the area becomes a regional leader, and if that large community says no, then it's a discouragement to other smaller communities around to say yes. But in the case of Lansing, you can point to Diamonddale, you can point to so many other communities around the city that have embraced cannabis industries as well. So you're looking at an example, I think, that goes beyond just a single city. You talk about a regional success story there. One that I think Kalkaska is starting to set, in the northern area. We talked about them earlier. We look at East Tawas, Au Gray, that whole Lake Huron corridor there, where there are a lot of very friendly communities. You can even start outside of Bay City and move all the way up the coastline, almost all the way to Mackinac. So regionally, we have some great success stories. Sean, you came from outside the cannabis industry to come in here. What's been your overall impression about the growth that we've seen since you got involved? I mean, it's pretty staggering to those of us that have been involved for a while, but I mean, it's pretty impressive, right?
I think it is, and the sort of the counterintuitive growth. I don't know. Maybe it's not counterintuitive. I don't think anybody really considered it probably before in the throes of a pandemic. What industry, what nascent industry, what baby industry, right? What new industry experienced such fantastic growth and really prospered? Thankfully, it was an industry that did prosper during the pandemic, and so that to me kind of stands out as wow, how well this new industry, maybe getting wobbly a little on its young feet, but kind of getting there in the midst of a pandemic. That to me really stands out and sticks out.
Let me just comment about that, because the concept that cannabis commerce is a new industry is really false, because we've been doing cannabis commerce for decades on an illegal level. Really, all that's happened has been we've shifted where people purchase their cannabis from. We've not created a whole lot of new users. We haven't created a whole lot of new anything. All we've really done is just, rotated the destination for those cannabis purchasing dollars. So from that perspective, I mean, we didn't recruit, $3.2 billion worth of people smoking cannabis. They were doing that in 2008 and 2007 before the medical law. So, but I understand your point. I mean, really, an uphill slope of an improvement. Really was.
Yeah, I stand corrected. You're actually right. It was more of a shift than a shift to a different outlet, a different supply stream, and the sort of supply chain, but that has let's hope it keeps growing. That's all we can hope for, I think.
Sean, what legal services do you offer clients? I know we have a lot of folks watching here that are maybe not commenting, but are licensees or considering becoming a licensee. What can you do to help those folks out?
I can help those folks maintain compliance with the licenses they have, make sure that they're renewed on time, make sure that when they need to make adjustments to their business, that the right disclosures are made, and work with them to make sure. There are a lot of disclosures, and there are a lot of the rules are detailed, and sometimes the way the rules are written aren't, they don't necessarily get the rules right on the first try, but identifying those kinds of issues are part of the regulatory compliance component of what I am able to offer, with a decade plus of municipal and investment litigation, general counsel advising experience behind me. So I can, if you need part of a general counsel, I can be part of a general counsel for you. If you need contracts reviewed, that's in my wheelhouse. I have litigation experience if it comes to that. I think, and I'm familiar with things like energy regulation, which is a very small, very few people, very few attorneys understand that. But that energy spend as your grow operation progresses and expands, and keeping in mind and making sure that you're not paying sales tax, hopefully, on the electrons that you purchase for your grow operation. You're getting an agricultural exemption, and making sure you get the form to the utility, and so you don't have to pay a portion of that extra 6%. That's actually something the state is promoting as well. But identifying those kinds of issues and supporting these businesses, which at some level are just, like I said, as I said earlier, they're just businesses. They have the same kinds of employment issues, contract issues, supplier issues, supply chain issues that other businesses would have. And so I guess that's for Gallagher Law, that's what we can offer. And we're really enjoying being in this space and working with these businesses, and it's something I'm really enjoying.
Nice.
Electrons should be tax-free. I'm just saying. That was a great line. I support that. Let's make that happen. What do we got to do? Print some T-shirts? Buy some congressmen? We got it.
Right. Well, the puns. So, Rick, I've experienced the puns in the energy industry and the energy regulation industry and the cannabis industry. They just don't quit. Anyone asks me, how's your cannabis practice? It's growing. I don't know what else to say. Energy lawyers will charge you like this is they're bad puns. They're dad puns, frankly. But they're puns. And so maybe T-shirts. Maybe T-shirts are in order.
Yeah, we can have that done.
You said you cross over to litigation if necessary. Has any of that? You didn't say you specifically offer the service, but has any of that ever crossed into you having to put on a little bit of a criminal defense for anybody? Have you ever gotten into that world at all?
No, I do offer litigation. We do offer litigation as a service. Criminal. I came out of my experience is not criminal law and criminal defense. I leave that to criminal defense attorneys. That's not the sort of the legal experience that I came out of, and the legal world that I came out of was civil litigation, investment side litigation involving public pension funds, civil rights claims, business claims, business tort claims. And so I kind of come to the industry not having seen it grow out of, the black to gray market, but kind of with more of a, I guess, business law background, I would say.
I'm just curious if that ever. I know it wasn't something that you offered, but that ever showed up in your line of stuff. You care about the caregivers and stuff. They get they get caught up in some bad stuff. And for example, if such a client was in that world and you really wanted to look out for them or whatever.
Well, I would refer them to.
Sure. Oh no, sure.
My friend Mike Nichols, who's got the Nichols law firm half a mile down the road from me. I would text Mike and say, hey, this is something you're going to get a call.
Mike's got an established reputation amongst us.
Absolutely.
So yes.
And one of our favorite, Josh Covert, is a former partner in that law firm.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Barry Chartier was associated too for us. So yes, we know all those.
Yeah. Well, and of course, Mike, Rick is a former journalist. He was a journalist here in Lansing before heading to law school. And I love it when he asked Mike what he does, and he says, "I defend the Constitution." So I think it's a really cool way to frame how criminal defense practice is.
Well, he's done some great work and looked out for clients by seeing through the bullshit with some of the testing and stuff like that for his DUI clients and all that kind of stuff. It was really.
Like in 2015, they were trying to put in a per se THC driving limit for nanograms, and they were having a hearing for it in the House of Representatives. Mike Nichols, Robin Snyder, and myself were the three people that testified against that bill, and we were able to convince them to not approve it in committee, essentially because they were using bullshit to justify it. Mike's testimony was helpful. It was really helpful. So we recognize people that have been there for a long time and been doing good things. So thanks for mentioning his name. And Sean, you've been doing this now for a couple of years now. You said, right?
Yeah, the cannabis, been focused on the cannabis industry since June of 2019. I started practice in full time in 2009, and was with a pretty big firm for about 9.5 years, and then started my own operation in 2019. And so it's been just over 2 years that I've been kind of focused on cannabis. My first client had a municipal concern related to industrial hemp and a potential ordinance there, and then it's kind of snowballed. I met Connie Sparrow last year at the pop-up party, and Connie introduced me to, can't tell me how many people that I've come to be able to help in the space, which is great, which is how business works, right? Networking works.
Yeah. So what is your familiarity and understanding of the DeRuyter opinion and how it pertains to what localities how they can deal with that?
Yeah, the DeRuyter opinion, and that's as I understand it, is more focused on caregivers in the ability of the municipality to restrict and put limitations on how much and where caregiver grow can happen, to the point of being within, potentially even restricting a space within a person's home. That is the high level. That is as far as without reviewing it.
That's pretty. I mean, I would say
it's a good thumbnail.
Reasonable. Okay. Anyway, it left open what is reasonable or unreasonable, depending on how you read it.
Sure.
And creating a challenge from every place, and we follow and try to support a woman named Judith Pontius, who's nearly 80 years old, and is having some issues with Ypsilanti Township over it. And what happened in her case, she had been challenged already starting years ago, and won on Verbeek, based on a victory by
Wyoming versus Verbeek.
Verbeek, right? Who was forced or potentially forced out of growing because they tried anything that's federally illegal, or a locality tried anything that's federally illegal is also legal here. So that didn't work there, and she won. And the township was relentless and requested leave to the Supreme Court, but the DeRuyter case was there, so they said, let's just let this, decide it for us. DeRuyter made that vague, kind of dubious opinion, and it was sent back down to the Court of Appeals, which reversed itself and included things like, oh yeah, you can make it a home occupation and all that. But then the problem is that was never itself challenged back to the Supreme Court, and many of us believe that that's not what they intended.
Okay.
Especially somebody in her case. Nobody ever doubted that she was doing anything outside of state law. She's taking care of like 3 patients, and they're all, whatever, legitimate, whatever you want to call that. I mean, there's nothing like, there's no holes in what she's doing really, and it can't be what was intended. And
Right.
But that was never challenged, so she personally lost. But it's not settled law yet. These people are going to remain vulnerable, for these places that want to push it. And of course, we've seen the Township Association and Municipal League always want to push. You have the locals push and see how much control they can get. When these things these vague situations come up like this. So.
Well, in their position, one municipality's paying gives guidance to all the others, the 1,700 some municipalities across the state. So they like to see individual communities try and restrict things as much as they can, because that's how they'll find out what the guidelines are, what is and what is not. The problem is that just puts people at risk. For municipal experimentation, and it's not right. We shouldn't have criminality that determines whether or not someone walks free based on some commissioner or some city attorney trying to score points so he can get reelected. You know how that goes.
I have a law question. What are the chances, like, if it gets descheduled in Michigan, that would everything get thrown out? Like these kind of cases? Would they just go away if there was a descheduling of cannabis in the state, or if it went federally, for that matter? If it descheduled or federally, would any of these cases matter anymore, or would they basically just go away?
Yes, I guess the question is, would either federal or state descheduling cause a mootness issue such that we don't need to decide this case because it's
that activity is no longer a crime.
It's no longer a crime. Well, that's a really interesting question. I think the way you would approach it, and I don't think I could really offer a full opinion on it as we sit here, Jim, but I think it's a good question. I think you would approach it probably by considering just the federal level, and then considering just the state level. So right now, Michigan, for example, so one point you would consider is that right now at the state level, Michigan has decriminalized marijuana possession and use for individuals up to a certain amount. Individuals over 21 can grow, 21 and over can grow 12 plants at their home, and there's no criminal penalty. So we've already seen some decriminalization, but we still have all this litigation. So what's the litigation about? So some of the litigation's about where can you do X activity, caregiver space versus, MMFLA or MiNORML activity, adult use activity, whether it's grow, process, transport, and then I think I think you'd have to, it'd be kind of a dual analysis in whether or not one would be overridingly change it. I'm not sure that it would. And let's just say, for example, the federal government says, the Attorney General with a stroke of his pen takes it off the Schedule 1 list, and you don't need to worry about federal law anymore. You don't need to worry about federal prohibitions. Then you just think about Michigan. Well, we have laws in place that regulate and are intended to regulate use, consumption, growing, production, sale. So I don't know that the litigation would necessarily disappear, because a lot of the things potentially being litigated are things that are just decision-making things with municipalities, for example, Warren, following the Open Meetings Act. So I'm not sure we'd I don't want to offer a conclusion or an opinion, but I'm not. It would be an interesting analysis to conduct, and I think those are the kinds of things you would consider. So,
I can certainly see that if there's not retroactivity included in the legislation, then it would be up to each individual district court or judge to make their own decision, and it would be chaos. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, I just want to let Sean know that there are people actively trying to get at least on a statewide basis cannabis removed from the Controlled Substances. Controlled Substances Act of like 1978.
Yep.
You know, of course, all these newer laws came well after our superior, and when you take that off, they remain. So the systems in place for the commercial stuff, or what you can do individually, and what the consequences are, and all those are law that doesn't need this controlled substances list and its connection to the criminal code anymore. But what happens is it's still there, and anything that can't be interpreted out of the existing law, like maybe the remuneration issue when there's a transfer between adults or something like that. Some prosecutors, including Wayne County's prosecutor, Kim Worthy, has allowed it to kind of revert back to the criminal code of people who have been charged with felonies and stuff like that. So that's one of the reasons we're trying to do it. Plus, there's still CPS issues as a result of it being a Schedule 1 narcotic on the controlled substances list.
Sure.
And there's issues with people getting their licenses reinstated. There's many reasons why it needs to come off. Fortunately, Representative Robbie from Ann Arbor is poised to introduce such a bill.
Who was also at the MICIA conference this last couple of days. Talk about a real champion for the cause. He walks the walk and talks the talk.
He does. He was one of the first attendees at the pop-up party. I vividly recall sharing ice cream cone. We had ice cream cones at 2:00 in the morning at the first pop-up.
Awesome.
Robbie, really cool guy. Really.
He was on the sandbar too.
Was a good dancer. Yeah, he was on the sandbar. He's got such long legs. I mean, he could probably walk halfway across the lake. But he was also dancing at the MICIA conference. This is how comfortable he is around our community. He let himself go. He was all doing things I can't do. I'll tell you what, he was great. So the reality is we have legislative partners and then we have legislative partners. And I think he is one of the latter.
And so, Sean, I just want to let you know just a little bit more about this controlled substance list while we're here, just to finish the thought.
Yeah.
There was a bill that passed. It was like 3 sessions ago, maybe. Rick might help me out. It was called Senate Bill 660.
Okay.
And it did pass, and it like created a medical marijuana commercial system.
The Pharmaceutical Grade Marijuana Act, it's called.
There were going to be special marijuana pharmacies created. It
Wow.
be grown in a lot of this Canadian company was going to grow a lot of cannabis in these vacant like former copper mines up in the UP, and people were going to get it mailed to them, or anyway, it passed, but there was a provision that it would only be effective if there was federal descheduling.
But it's a law. It's on the books. The governor, Rick Snyder, signed it. So if ever there's a federal rescheduling, there's always a concern that the Pharmaceutical Grade Marijuana Act will pop back into play. That's what Jamie's getting at, I think.
And part of it also, I think, includes you, if you're part of the medical program on, I guess in this case, the MRA, you can't be part of that pharmaceutical program.
That was part of it, yeah. But the point is, like, that I'm trying to get to, and those are all parts of the reasonable, parts of that act to let you know about it. And also, while if there is federal, just for a second, there is federal descheduling, it's no longer a competitive system. I mean, I don't think anybody would really try. Maybe there's a niche thing that could be done with it or something like that. I mean,
the voter-directed initiative would overrule it because it would be in contradiction to that.
Yeah, it could be a parallel system, but I just don't know how competitive it could be or how useful it would really be to anybody or something like that. Some people are still really scared of it for some reason. But anyway, what did come out of it was that cannabis was now also designated simultaneously as a Schedule 2, and that did happen. So cannabis right now on the state's controlled substances list consists at the same time a Schedule 1 and a Schedule 2. Schedule 2 for when being used medically. So instead of realizing that there's a conflict and that it should be changed, the resolution is it has to come off.
Right.
Here's what we went to. So it just shows you how illogical you get when the word marijuana shows up in the conversation, and we have to. This transition has been filled with those challenges.
It's sort of interesting to that point, Jamie, to observe this thing, marijuana, that for a lot of people in their lifetime, like, it was prohibited for the entirety of my lifetime, and probably close to 20 years or more before I was born, in 75, right? But this thing, now that it's a thing that we're now, prohibition has ended here, and it's happening. A lot of people some people just don't know what to do with it. If it's not their thing, they just don't know what to do with it. And when you don't know what to do with something, or you don't understand something, sort of maybe the human reaction is to be a little bit tentative about it, or scared about it, or just not want to hear about it. And that's kind of an interesting thing that I sort of have seen with cannabis. I don't know if you all feel the same way. I
do. In fact, logic is abandoned by people who normally know how to utilize it when the word marijuana shows up.
I think there has to be a personal change. It can't be marketed, I don't think, to certain people, because being from South Carolina, the huge shift from 5 years ago to today with my family, never talking about it. And if I started talking about it, they would just pretend like it wasn't, to calling me and saying, hey, my friend's dad is about to have radiation, and we've heard that there's creams that can help, and do you know anything about that, and could you talk with him? And those kind of conversations, there's no way those would have happened 5 years ago with my family, right? So knowing that it probably is there but underground, but I think it has to come from a personal story of some sort. I don't think it can be like an agenda,
Sure. We know that one of the things that make people switch their mind about cannabis is a personal experience with cannabis. And it doesn't have to be them actually consuming cannabis. Just like Shelly described, they can see a trusted friend have an experience with cannabis, or they can hear a story from an unimpeachable source that they just take right to heart. Those are personal experiences with cannabis, even if you've never touched the flower. So when we talk about that, over time, more and more people have these conversations. And the real thing that happens, though, is more and more they realize they've been lied to all these years. They realize that the things that they were told turned out not to be true. And when we wonder why historically we've had such terrible participation in things like elections, or why people are so sour on the government, it's because we caught them lying so many times. It's difficult for us to put trust back in them. And the drug war was the biggest lie. You talk about the election nonsense, that's fine. January 6th, big lie, I totally get it. But the drug war was the biggest lie, and that's a fact.
Hey, do you want to know a great thing? On the way into the state of Michigan yesterday from Chicago, driving in, I saw probably 8 or 9 billboards of different cannabis companies with some sweet little, one-liner about cannabis and the leaf like blazed on the side of the highway. And that's really good to see. It's really good to see as you're driving into the state, and then throughout the state for everybody. I mean, young and old, to accept it.
Now, we talk about normalizing cannabis. That's one of the ways we do it. We have, not inoffensive examples all around, and people just accept the fact that it exists. Nice-looking stores, people that behave well according to municipal law. Those are the examples that we need to set. Here's another one. Boy, this Hyman joint that I had, this apple runts, I did the whole 2-gram joint. Loved it. Never coughed once. I must really be high, though, because I've been watching invisible people hand Shelly things throughout the entire show. Her glasses. She's been speaking to people that I can't see. I must really be baked, man. That's a good trick. Wow. Excellent testimonial. Thank you. Apple runs. See, I did it again. Okay.
This meeting was scheduled the same time as my mime rehearsal, and it's really important to get the mime rehearsal in on
You're doing great.
night. So I've just
I
been
bought it.
doing my mime rehearsal. I hope that that's okay with you guys.
Well, you're sort of in a Zoom box, so you could kind of do the box thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But
We
it's
have fallen-
reversed. It's very it's challenging.
We have veered out of our lane and back
Yeah.
into.
Sean, I'm wondering, is there anything that you want to make sure that that you discuss or get out there?
Yeah, maybe going back to what I would say about the lawsuit that I filed this month. A lot of the information that came to be part of the suit and the factual allegations, and then they're factual allegations based on investigation that is sort of a normal course of events for.
And this is the Muskegon case?
This is the Muskegon case.
Okay.
A lot of what is alleged is taken right from Zoom video meetings recorded on Facebook by the City Commission of Muskegon. And so on or about, I think the dates were the dates, but literally you can go to the Zoom and watch for yourself and decide for yourself. The dates were, I think April 13th was the final approval of the property where Miss Sparrow, the property that Miss Sparrow previously had a right to buy it. When she had that right and that property was denied, for inclusion in the marijuana overlay district, that was on September 22nd. And again, just a public meeting at the City of Muskegon, and that's a public record, right? That's consistent with the Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act.
Just incidentally, had we not gone into COVID, had they not started using Zoom so much and then recording it on Facebooks and stuff, would this stuff be so easily and readily available?
No.
Like that?
No, it would not.
Isn't that really a problem, Sean? I mean, don't we agree? All of these things should be recorded and available for posterity or for legal purpose?
And I mean, there are. Well, the Open Meetings Act requires a certain level of record keeping. Many municipalities go beyond many public bodies go beyond the minimum required and show a commitment to transparency. At some level, either with the Zoom meeting, and I think it was available and could be done even before Zoom, whether it was just an audio recording that was made of the open session and the closed session. That's a standard, typical good practice for a public body. In addition to preparing minutes of a meeting and having an agenda in advance made available to the public, not just posted on the front door, but the law requires, as I recall, if you have a website, you need to post your meeting notice on your website if you have a web space. And so yeah, should all these things be recorded in order to promote governmental transparency? Yeah, I think so. Shelly had her hand up, or she was waving. Maybe she's just she's trying to distract Rick.
She's waving at the invisible people.
Now she's invisible, waving at the invisible people.
It's not just me then, thank goodness. Okay, maybe the joint's not as good as I thought it was, but so Sean, it's been wonderful talking with you. What's your outlook for the cannabis industry? We talked to Director Brisboe last year. The industry generated a little less than $1 billion. Director Brisboe at the MICIA conference reinforced his belief that we'll hit 1.5 this year. On my 420 post, he said, if you ignore fiscal year and just go calendar year January to December, we might get up to 2. That's very optimistic. I mean, aren't we all excited about the future?
Yeah, I think there's good reason to be excited about the future. I'm no economist. I would not tell you that I am. But I think there's reason to be optimistic about the future, not only because the cannabis has kind of maintained its the growth, but also because as the world hopefully, blessedly, thaws from the COVID nightmare that we've all experienced over the last year and a half, and when we get back closer towards a new perspective, having walked that walk, and as the economy kind of gets back to the humming economy that it was in the years before the pandemic, hopefully the cannabis will just ride right along with it. I tend to listen to NPR on the way to work in the morning, and I heard there's apparently not, there's a little bit of not so hot feelings at the Fed right now concerning where interest rates are and where inflation is, and that hopefully as people get back to work and then hopefully that stuff will work out and help the cannabis industry and help, for example, the labor shortage. Not just the cannabis industry is experiencing, but other industries are experiencing labor shortage, and that the people are out there. We got to get them to work, I think.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. In the United States of America, we are moving more and more towards a 420 system. More individual states are coming online. Each state is modifying their program, in my opinion, in most cases trying to make it better. And we're seeing a national move by some of the state regulators, like Director Brisboe, to come together to try and create a strategy where we can maybe homogenize some of the state programs, or at least change them in a way that would allow interstate commerce. You have any estimation or any outlook on whether or not you think Joe Biden can get decriminalization done, or Chuck Schumer, for that matter, can get decriminalization done in the 2021-2022 legislative session?
I'm not going to get on that limb, Rick. I will say the thing that I heard recently that, isn't such a hot idea, but the idea that right now on the tax front, the Internal Revenue Service is basically raking manna from heaven because of provision in the tax code known not very fondly as 280E. It doesn't seem to me, and I'm a student of government and international studies with my undergraduate program and degree, and it seems to me that there's not with that being in place the way it is now, it's not a huge fiscal incentive to get there. At least that piece of it, that one small component is not a help. It's kind of a barrier to ask the federal government to take away that revenue stream, or a portion of that revenue stream anyway.
I wonder, there has to be a way to compute what regulated cannabis businesses are paying in 280E taxes. 280E would normally allow them to write off certain things and not pay taxes on them. But in this instance, it forces them to pay taxes on them because it considers legal cannabis business expenses as drug trafficking, and therefore there's no tax exemption for that business type. We should have some finite number, right, of what 280E generates on an annual basis from the Fed?
I don't know that we should. I think the IRS should be able to, and you would think that there's a federal agency out there that could calculate such a number, and the IRS seems to me to be probably closest to it, since they're the ones raking it in, and they have to account for it at some aggregate level, I would suspect. How easy it is to get to that, whether there's a document that you could submit a FOIA request to through the Federal Freedom of Information Act and get that answer, is maybe a question for a law student at Michigan State at the new 7 Point Society. Maybe I should ping the law students and see if they can dig that up and send it your way, Rick.
That wasn't one of the organizations that showed up at the
Rally the Allies.
Okay.
Yep, at Rally the Allies, which is a meeting we had at a residence in Ypsilanti, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago now. A group of law students from Michigan State University attended, and they were forming some kind of an organization about cannabis law, and to find kindred spirits like that in young, intelligent people was really nice. And that would be great. Ping the students. I like that phrase. See if you can get them to do it.
I'll do that. I actually ran into former interim dean of the Law College last Friday night. I'm a MSU Law alum, and I mentioned the 7 Point Society to her, and she said, yes, we're on it, and those students are on it. And kudos to those students who followed up with me. They sent me an email at 9:30 at night the day after the event. So they are getting the networking and business the networking piece of things. So that's industrious, and that's cool to see. As an alum, it's cool to see, and that they're going even more green there at MSU. It's kind of fun.
Go white.
Go green.
Yeah.
Love it.
If green symbolizes cannabis, what does the white symbolize then?
Smoke, baby.
Yeah, the smoke, Jamie.
First you go green,
I was thinking
then you go
cocaine.
white. Oh,
The coca plant.
Rick, there's your
This is
T-shirt. There's your
Yeah.
T-shirt.
I
Although
like it, though.
the MSU law or the MSU Office of General Counsel might have to work through a license issue there, but maybe that's I don't know. When I was in college, the knockoff T-shirts were all the rage. There was always somebody that would come around with the T-shirts in his backpack to the dorm. I didn't go to MSU, but that's at least I'm not suggesting anyone do this, but it's something someone might do.
I'm sure that idea is already being put in play by some of our enterprising viewers right now. Jamie, we are doing such great time here. What else did we have on the program today? Is it all Sean all the time?
I feel like Jamie and Jim wanted to do sort of like a freestyle rap battle. I know we talked about that earlier. You guys were going to do a freestyle rap battle, right?
I will light another joint if that happens. Let me just tell you.
Yeah. So you guys can just start whenever you're ready. Give him a beat, Rick.
Boy, did you come to the wrong source?
Jamie's clearing his throat and getting ready. I can see. He's practicing.
Yeah.
He's practicing.
Practicing, man. Right? Always ready to go for a rap battle.
Yeah. Always ready to watch
what I
a
live for.
rap battle. Yeah.
Now, Sean's welcome to hang out for as long as we want. We do have some other things that we could be discussing. Sean can hang out and discuss these other things with us.
That
love
sounds
it.
great.
But wanted to make sure the last time around that if we were going to go, that you had an opportunity to fill in whatever we were missing out on in the discussion.
Thanks. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Really, I've enjoyed the conversation and being able to participate. So thank you all. But I'll hang out. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean.
One of the things in the news, from a legal standpoint, has been the use or abuse, rather, of the image of Borat, the image of the actor that plays Borat on a cannabis billboard in Massachusetts. Have you guys heard this?
I have heard it. I didn't realize
I heard
it was
about that.
Massachusetts. I thought it might have been like California or something like that. But
I lost a little respect for Borat after that.
regardless,
Sasha Baron Cohen did not approve that. They just
No.
used that image. They used that image, and then
Yeah.
he sued them for, I think,
$9 million.
I agree with that, but I don't agree with what the statement said from their group that basically he doesn't have anything to do with cannabis. He won't he doesn't touch it, and he denied that.
That's the same for many products and things like that, though, who try to who want to cash in on his image. It's not he's not singling out cannabis.
His movies are only funny when you're
Hey,
smoking.
I like cannabis, but you can't cash out on my image, without paying me for it or arranging it.
I wish you would have been more honest about it, I guess.
No, I dig it. It's interesting, Sean. You know what we're talking about here. We're talking about infringing on someone's likeness and your ability to do so. We see in the unregulated market all the time people imitating regular candy products, imitating the word Skittles, imitating logos and styles, right? What kind of a real risk are people taking when they sort of incorporate someone else's trademark into their own business?
It's so. Then I guess I got to lay out the disclaimer up front. Intellectual property is not something that I've spent a lot of time focusing on in my career. I know enough to know that's kind of outside my lane and where I focus on, but I know folks that are very experienced in protecting marks and of all kinds and copywriting, information. I think the industry is a little young, probably. So that all that said, I think I've observed some of that and where folks are associating their products with a known concept that may be protected, and that if it is, so the risk is, how prominent is it? So a billboard in Massachusetts is a fairly prominent thing to get attention, right? An edible that has a word that's associated with something else protected that is relatively locally distributed and not put on a high profile. They don't put it on a billboard, then there's probably less likely to draw the attention of the person that's trying to protect that mark.
Yeah. How could they possibly think that was going to work? Like they made it. What about the billboard company? Did the billboard company? I mean, it just seems like such a. How did it get so far to where they went ahead and used someone's whole image?
That's an interesting kind of a question. With something that's that obvious, is a billboard company or ad company do you believe would have an obligation to say, you sure you guys have?
You guys know Borat, right?
All the clearance to do this?
I don't know.
Before we put this up,
I'm a fan. Borat's he's
funny. Yeah, sure.
Entertaining character. That's an issue that's going to come down to each state's law, Jamie, probably. And each state has, especially in highly regulated industries, each state has its own flavor of advertising restrictions that butt up against the First Amendment, right? So whether it's casino gaming or whether it's cannabis, there's a balance to strike with what you do with a billboard, for example. But yeah, is there a general, or is there a risk, depending on where you are and what the law is, that you as the billboard owner may have some liability for what is displayed, like any other media outlet, right? A billboard outlet is a media outlet, and so they likely have a contract that is a written contract that says, oh, we're going to do this. You're going to have this frequency of billboard time and using your images, and they may try to get an indemnity provision and try to put the liability on the advertisee, or to say, look, if we get sued because you use somebody's mark that you shouldn't have, well, then you're going to pay our legal fees.
Yeah, I would imagine that the billboard owner would have no idea who Borat was in some cases, and that whoever did this in their marketing campaign, like they did it for the bad publicity. Just to get out there, it's still good publicity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
8 mil or 9 mil for plus the cost of the billboard, I guess, for this national publicity we're talking
International publicity, right? Because that Borat movie went everywhere. So anything associated.
What's the name of the company?
Ta-da! It didn't work so well, huh?
I guess it didn't work.
Yeah. Sean, one of the things that is pretty clear nowadays is that the federal government, FDA specifically, is cracking down on CBD companies that make claims of health benefits that are not substantiated with what they consider to be adequate scientific evidence. They've been sending letters warning companies to do that. What is the guideline? I mean, obviously, it may not be in your specialty area of law, but that's another area where someone should probably seek professional guidance before printing up a whole bunch of packages that turn out to be illegal, right?
Yeah. I think I think there's even state law that is that. So I seem to recall in reviewing the state rules this weekend on an issue concerning advertising. But I ran through several of the rule sets and came across one that, I guess it was in the advertising section. I think it was the license, in the sales rule set. There was a license. There was a provision that basically said kind of reflected that probably federal prohibition about not making any claims that a CBD or other product had health benefits until and unless the FDA has published X guidance concerning, that there is a benefit.
Yeah, one of the presentations at the conference was part on that issue.
Sure.
And he was very cautious to advise people to not make yourself an accidental criminal to try and get specific legal guidance on that issue. Especially, what he did say is that Michigan has a standard and the feds have a standard. Why not just apply? Why not just use the federal standard in your labeling now, so that if later on something happens, you're already covered? It's sort of like overachieving the emission standard for your automobile, or overachieving your expectation for recycling in your home, right? You do it because it's a good idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rick, I don't know if you've ever encountered this being in the cannabis industry, but not everybody's great at business stuff. I mean, I know it's really surprising. You would think everybody would have like amazing structure and they've thought through all the laws and everything, and they know
as we discussed
money
a lot,
everything's going to cost.
Good
but
personal habits, yeah.
and even if they
turns
are,
out,
they need the other component. If they are awesome at business and have a proven track record, they also need another whole component of information with which to make good decisions in this new world.
mm-hmm.
And many don't have that.
And not being an asshole also, so that you would notice when you were doing something crazy wrong would also be a good idea.
You were staring at me when you said that. I can tell right on the computer.
I wasn't.
Okay.
I can't figure out where to look because of the reverse view. It's blowing my mind. I'm having a hard time focusing.
Wow.
So,
All right,
kind of alluding to the MCMA.
Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association.
Yeah, there was an article recently. I was in it. It was Gus Burns from MLive, who was kind of learning about. He had been out of circulations for a little bit, and he was kind of learning about it. So he did some interviews and put out a piece on what's generally going on with the contentiousness and the issues that we have and that type of stuff. And the reason I bring it up is because last night there was some confusion over what I said, some comparison to some pleasantries kind of philosophy that I just want to make sure doesn't, stay the way that many people think about it. And it was simply that there is discussion. There's discussion even amidst some of people who are very friendly to us in the legislature about both recognizing the fact that sometimes there's activity that's outside of the commercial world in which people produce cannabis and sell it and that type of stuff, and that something should be done about it, and that type of stuff. And what I said, and of course that would sound like a pleasantries type thing, like, hey, we got to do something about all this, legal activity out of, or MCMA type thing, we have to do about it. What I said was that we don't need to do anything. Those, when you get outside of the limitations or whatever, that's already not allowed. And if somebody comes across that and doesn't like it or whatever, there's our processes that it can go into. There's no additional restrictions or laws against caregivers that need to be created in order to try to curb activity that's already not permitted. And that was misconstrued for saying that, oh yeah, there's these people who do that stuff and we should go get them or something like that. And that is, definitely not what I was suggesting.
Jamie Lowell, I'm going to ask you two questions. First of all, how many plants are a patient allowed in the state?
Patient, 12.
And do you believe, yes or no, that Judith Pontius and her 55 plants is an amount necessary to provide a continuous stream of medication for that patient?
Yeah, it definitely can be.
So when we talk about what's allowable,
there's going to be a presentation on that, and it'll explain why
it's not just 12.
And then I would say yes, yeah. And that's utilizing the the affirmative defense, Section 8 of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, to exceed the limitations because it's necessary.
So when people think that they understand what you stand for, they don't really appreciate the depth of what you're trying to represent. You're representing not just 12 plants per patient, but maybe up to 55 plants per patient based on the situation. So people that are looking for trouble find trouble, or they create it in its absence. So I think that, your history stands. Nobody should be impeaching you. Fuck those guys.
There you go.
Well, I mean, I don't know if the confusion remained after I tried to explain it, but I just want to
If they didn't want to hear it, it remained. If they didn't want to hear you,
Another thing I wanted to bring up, and not to be too much of a downer, and to totally change the subject and not even talk about cannabis at all, but there has been on news programs today coverage of a lot of the testimony given by the Capitol police officers that were engaged with the
insurrectionists.
The insurrectionists, yep. And that stuff is really intense. There was one guy, former military. He described being in that confrontation, which was a battle in which there was fighting, in which there were people being attacked, and he was engaged for a long time. He got injured. He got out, went home, cleaned up, hugged his wife and kids, said, "I'm able to go back and continue my duty, and it's my oath I swore to the Constitution." And his point ultimately was that he was prepared to give his life for what he swore an oath to, and he saw some politicians in there who were trying to protect their party. And he created a very thoughtful and emotional comparison. There's a lot of it that it goes on. There's a lot of intense testimony from many of those participant officers and that whole thing.
Jamie, I heard on I believe National Public Radio that one of the officers said that he was continuously assailed with racial slurs by the insurrectionists, even though he's a uniform officer trying to protect his constitutional obligation and the Capitol building. When you talk about the character of the people that were doing these actions, I think these individual acts really just find the character. You could talk about maybe the philosophy, but in the moment when the chips were down, some people went feral. They went feral. They let everything out, and this is what we saw. And that has a consequence. Has to.
That's a good way to describe it. Somebody took a shit in the hallway. Let's say
that's about as feral as you can get, I suppose.
Feral,
I'm assuming
we're just shitting wherever we walk.
Non-potty trained feral.
Yeah, haven't really had wild animals in my home, but if I did, I'm pretty sure that's what they would have done. So let's go with that. Yes. Wow, but
really intense, man. I mean, it was just a few months ago. It's such a major thing. It's so weird.
I can't believe it was January 6th, and we're just in July. It seems like so much has happened since then. It seems much longer ago than just a few months.
Let's not talk about everything that's happened.
Yeah,
it's just too much.
2020 2021 will never be as long as 2020 was. In my opinion,
it's somewhere between 5 minutes and 24 years in my mind that I just am not ready to pin it all down yet.
Yeah.
How about the Olympics?
Oh my gosh, Simone Biles! I have been so excited, and she got hurt or freaked out, or I don't know, but I was so sad. She was so amazing.
Yeah, she cited mental health reasons, mental stability reasons for her stepping out of the team competition for the gymnastics group. And as a result, or maybe not as a result, but the U.S. team did take silver, and the Russian team, that's not the Russian team, but they're the Russian team, they took gold. So
for what it's worth, if you guys, three things on the Olympics. Last night I was looking up Simone Biles stuff and all this, and I came across the China defeating Japan. Japan defeating China table tennis match, which is worth watching. It is worth watching.
Those guys were unreal. That kind of stuff.
It's amazing.
Those guys are really good.
Also, I've just been hearing such positive things about cannabis in the Olympics, and athletes coming out, Olympians coming out, and I love hearing about that. So if it's a stress-related thing that Simone is going through, I hope her cannabis-wise Olympian friends are looking to take care of her.
See sinister sounds from Shelly's house. I've told you, the invisible people. But I'd be worried about any of our Olympians using cannabis in China because the penalties are so harsh. And I'm sorry, in Japan, still the penalties are harsh there too.
Yeah,
and you'd
yes,
hate to
they
think
are.
that your visa could be jerked just because somebody finds a roach.
Well, when they
we
get
talked
back.
about it before. Somebody just
Yeah.
tested positive, went to another country and tested positive and got in prison.
Yeah. Well,
Well, when they get back.
Leaving Michigan and going into Indiana.
yeah. Connie reminds us she was given a trophy commemorating the shit show of 2020. She did receive a trophy from Robin at the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association event. So I want to say congratulations, but since I know what the trophy's for, I'll say,
That's
okay.
great.
I'll just recognize that you received a trophy.
I think I'd like to say out loud that I introduced Connie to Robin.
Yay.
Fun.
I was with the association. I got referred to her. I met her, and we all met up. I sent Ida over to a meeting with them at a little restaurant, and they became immediate besties and canceled all the rest of the day's appointments and just hung out all day loving each other. And I was like, okay, great.
And there's like a pedicure.
I don't know what was
Music.
going
There's like
on.
a montage of it.
They tried on a bunch of costumes together in the mirror with songs playing in the background. That's what happened.
Some of this is not true, viewers. I just want you to know. Some of that is
Yeah,
probably not correct.
sure. But they are. Are you telling me Robin, Connie, and Ida have never played dress up played high dress up? I'm 100% sure they have.
Okay.
Whether or not they have, I can certainly imagine.
That's what it takes. The
show disintegrates. Okay, so
We've done so good. We've been so
Just in time.
focused, and I'm
Yeah.
really
Hey, you know what, Sean?
impressed with myself.
I am being reminded now by somebody in comments, and you alluded to it, that we're going to be getting a bulletin from MRA concerning advertising and packaging, maybe. And there are rumors or discussions that there's going to be some specifics about the shape of fruits and some other things that were connected to some other packaging that came under scrutiny lately and had to be recalled.
Oh, yes. I'm not sure about a forthcoming bulletin. I didn't pick that up.
It's been rumored, and I don't know if there's any real expectation or evidence of it, or just it comes from the discussion and it's assumed, or what's going on with that.
It wouldn't surprise me. I'm aware of the situation with the packages that caused a lot of publicity recently. It wouldn't surprise me you get MRA to provide additional guidance in short order to put folks on notice, to let everybody know, hey, here's exactly what we're concerned about in this circumstance. That wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think that's probably a helpful thing for everybody.
Yeah, here's two things. First of all, at the MICIA conference, Director Brisboe said that they were going to be addressing some concerns they had regarding packaging, and that confirmed what he had said on the 420 Post interview that we had talked about previously. He told me that during COVID that they were a little bit lax on monitoring packaging, and children, they can't be certain colors, they can't be certain shapes, and that there was going to be some changes coming. And essentially, he said there's a reckoning coming. So he had suggested that there would be some sort of action then, and then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, at the MICIA conference, sort of reiterated that. So it seems as if, I'm not sure in what manner that's going to come, from an MRA directive or a potential rules change, or maybe selective enforcement as they individually notify companies that they believe have violated. But I think some action's headed our way.
like not paying attention to it for a while and maybe believing that they need to go review some stuff and make sure the standards are clear now for everybody.
And if you're the MRA saying, you know what, we let these guys do it for 6 months, I don't feel right just pulling the rug right out from underneath them. Let's just send them a warning letter saying next print you have to do it differently, and by a certain date you have to be in compliance. I could see that. That seems like a reasonable way to deal with business, especially if maybe you weren't 100% at the helm of the ship for the entire time. Donald says, from my source, I was told the word gummies won't be used anymore. That's actually something that people have been asking about for quite some time. It's not just the shape, and it's not just the color. It's the phraseology, the names that are used for certain things that can draw children in. So gummies is one of those things that's shared by children and adults alike. So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a combination of things. Gummies being eliminated, some individual enforcement actions, some letters. All of that could be coming up.
So we got mere moments left. Sean, you about ready to say something, please?
Yeah, I was reminded by I was reminded that by your question for me earlier, Jamie, concerning the 7-Point Society, and a kind of a positive note related to law students and awareness of cannabis regulation and in Michigan, and the social equity policy in Michigan. Connie actually established a Canna Social Equity Fund to support those who have been disenfranchised or negatively impacted, or lived in communities negatively impacted by marijuana prohibition. Connie is already working with the 7-Point Society at Michigan State on that angle related to cannabis, the cannabis regulatory framework, and that policy expressed in the MRA. In the MiNORML. And so I want to give a shout out to Connie for her leadership in that regard.
Excellent. Yeah, and I've heard that discussion on a couple shows too about the organization.
You know, in chat, Jen Bronson mentions the contradiction between having cotton candy liquor but saying it's not okay for us to have gummy medibles. The fact is, you can't look for logic. This is all just tatters of the drug war that we're slowly peeling away.
It's marijuana, so you don't look at it like reasonably, as we've been discussing here.
Exactly right. So the logic that we have and the fairness that we think should be applied to us is coming, but we get fairness by degrees. We don't get fairness with the snap of a finger. There's no Thanos in the federal government, and I suppose it's a good thing there isn't. But the reality is, we're so much better than we were before. But this just illustrates how much further we have yet to go. I read. Listen, we're just getting ready to take off. Do we have any final thoughts? Sean, would you like to give us contact information for your law firm so people know how to get a hold of you if they've been inspired to do so by your conversation today?
Yes, I'd gladly like to do so and share with you kind of the front and back of my business card. So I took this photograph. Let's see, here we go. Of the Washington Monument on October 10th, 2019. After an early morning run on the mall in the dark, which I'm not sure if you can do that right now, unfortunately, but I did it back then, standing in line to get tickets to go 500 feet into the air to the observation deck. So I put that on my business card because I thought it was a really good shot. And the sun coming up over the Capitol, hitting the monument, turning it orange. So, yes, so my info, here we go. Sean Gallagher, Gallagher Law, 517-230-3630. Or 313-969-0475. And then, here you go. Sean at legalspg.com.
All right.
You are the man. Thank you very much for all you're doing to defend patients and caregivers in the state of Michigan. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Jim, Entheo show. Talk to us. What's going on, big man?
Geez, we're going to be starting up here in a couple weeks again. Details to come next week. And then the Entheo Fest, September 19th at 11 a.m. It's a Sunday. We've got Barking Dog Daryl Brown as our keynote speaker. This man is part of the Five Nations civil rights movement coming down from the UP. He also is on the board. one of like 15 selected artists by the governor on an appointed board that he serves 3 years a term for. So he'll be speaking at as our keynote speaker at the Entheo Fest September 19th. Thank you so much.
All right.
Shelly, one more time with the special news about tomorrow's broadcast. I know we are almost out of time, so if you could,
Okay.
let us know.
Reads and Weeds on Instagram. Any streaming station is Reads and Weeds, and the book is Spree of 83, and it's the life and times of Freddie Powers.
Jamie Lowell, the heart and soul of Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Why don't you give us a final thought and take us out, buddy?
Well, another great show. Really appreciate it, Sean. Thanks for coming on and staying with us for so long too, and being part of our conversation and that kind of stuff. So, just appreciate everybody joining us again today. We had Adam and Pony Boy and Debra that have dropped off, but all part of another really great show, and we'll do it again next week. So, Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.